Well, hello out there, Ricecast family. Hope you're doing well, wherever you're listening to this podcast. Maybe you're on a road trip. You got a podcast planned. Maybe you're on a jog. You got a podcast going.
Do people listen to us jogging?
I think we're a great motivator to keep jogging.
Okay.
If you are listening to this on a jog, you're doing great. Keep up the good work.
Absolutely.
We'll pepper in a encouragement every now and again. We are back with another episode of the Ricecast. My name is Anthony Russo. I'm sitting across the table from the one, the only Dr. Pastor Willy Rice. Pastor Willy, how are you today?
Doing great. It's a beautiful day in Clearwater. We endured a tough winter here over the last 3 or 4 days, and we've emerged like the groundhog to see the sun shining. In Florida, we see if we can see the palm trees and the sunshine.
That's right.
Winter is officially over.
Winter is over. It's a short season, but we did have it. We made it to the other side. It is gorgeous today. Man, oh man, is it gorgeous. We're back. Clearwater's back in that sense. And yet, in some ways, we are a little sad here in the Bay Area to see I messed it up.
Tampa.
Tom Brady. I was trying to do the
Tampa.
Tampa.
Okay, yeah.
Tom Brady has officially retired from the Bucs.
Flags are at half staff. Our friends around the country are back to, maybe laughing again. But, hey, we had a great 2-year run with Tom Brady. And for those of us who are football fans and who have cheered for the Bucs since their inception, as I did when I was a boy.
Right.
We had a good 2 years. And a lot of with almost inarguably, I guess it's always arguable, but almost inarguably the greatest quarterback who's ever played the game. And certainly the most decorated, the most accomplished quarterback to ever play the game in terms of championships. And so, we had 2 great years with him, wearing a Buck uniform. He seemed to really enjoy his time here. He seems to have said great things about the area, seems to have enjoyed living here, and brought us home a Super Bowl. Wish it could have been one more. It wouldn't have been great if he could have just played this last year. And he did his part, but couldn't get it done. But anyway, a little sad to see it end, but we sure had a good ride.
It was a great ride. And you know what I'm thankful for? Obviously, the Super Bowl was great. Bunch of wins last couple of years. Here's something I'm thankful for today, Pastor. When I'm looking at the retrospectives of Tom and his career, and there's a little rivalry between Tampa and the New England area, okay? The Yankees and the Rays. There's just always a little something there. And their beloved New England Patriot quarterback Tom Brady and all these retrospectives. He's in a Buck uniform.
He's in a Tampa uniform. Now, I guess he'll go into the Hall of Fame in a Patriot uniform. But the Tampa career ended, for football fans out there, there's a lot of quarterbacks that transition to another team late in their career. Now, some did have some success. I think Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl with the Broncos.
With Denver,
but he wasn't at the top of his game then. It was more of a defensive team. There are others like Joe Namath and Johnny Unitas that actually switched teams, and almost nobody knows. No one remembers that Johnny Unitas, this is a throwback, it's before your time, finished, I think, with the Chargers. Nobody remembers it. Nobody remembers Joe Namath actually finished, I think, with the Rams. I could be wrong with that. Nobody remembers that. That would be, you see him in that uniform, it looks odd.
Yeah, right.
But Tom Brady comes to Tampa and goes to the Super Bowl, sets records. Now, again, our football history has not been all that acclaimed.
Right.
But he now holds records of how many touchdowns in the playoffs, how many playoff victories, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Says a lot about our football history that he could do that in 2 years. But nevertheless, he ended out on top. And this year, he was as great as ever. So you really are happy to see him go out on top. Wish he could have held that trophy one more time. But you know what? We're still grateful for what we had.
That's right. And we have a opening for the quarterback position here of the Tampa Bay Bucs.
Yep.
If you want to submit a resume or, I don't know, a highlight tape or something, we need someone to lead the team.
We do. I'm available. I mean, what better way to seal the legacy of a great quarterback than a 58-year-old quarterback?
Right. You thought.
Who would be so bad that everyone would know that Tom Brady was the greatest of all time.
You thought that was impressive.
No, we need a good, strong young man coming in there. Maybe Kyle Trask, we drafted him, and maybe we can hope, and who knows. So we'll see, and we'll play on, right?
Got to ask it because it's coming up here. Super Bowl, Rams taking on the... Speaking
Bengals.
of lowly football histories, taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah. Pastor, who you got in the Super Bowl, Rams, Bengals?
Ooh, I don't know. I thought the Rams had the better team overall. I thought they really are stacked as one of the best overall teams.
Yeah.
But, I watched them struggle to beat the 49ers again. They really tried to give it away playing us, even though they dominated for a while.
Yeah.
Honestly, we just had them right there at the end and let them up. So I don't, and Joe Burrow for the Bengals is just special.
Tough.
He's one of those guys that is special. So I don't know. And by the way, shout out to Evan McPherson, who's been making all these great kicks for the Bengals. Southern Baptist kid. Just want everybody to know, Baptist kid, loves the Lord, and was a member or very involved at Salt Church in Gainesville that we've helped plant.
Wow.
And where my son is. So my son is running around with an Evan McPherson jersey on because they were, he came to Salt. And so we just got to have a little affinity there. So I guess I'll pull for the Bengals.
There we go.
For Money Mac, Evan McPherson to kick a winning field goal.
Gotta love it. My youngest is the game was on at our house the other day. He's very into Bengal Tigers right now. So he took to the team very quickly.
Very quickly.
I actually think he abandoned the Bucks. I think we've lost.
Sometimes
him
kids
forward.
just choose the helmets. Have you noticed that? They just choose the helmets.
We've talked some about uniforms here. The Bengals helmet, I've always said, is one of my favorites.
Very distinctive.
The tiger print is pretty timeless. Hasn't changed much. They haven't had to tweak it a whole lot. I like that helmet.
Yeah, very timeless. So we'll see. I think that's next week sometime. So
we'll
see.
Coming up here soon. Big times there. Hey, let's talk about some Calvary things going on. This last Sunday was our baptism Sunday. Super special weekend here at Calvary. It was a very cold day. A lot of people very happy the baptisms were indoors.
Yeah.
Not a beach baptism like we also do here. But, yeah, any comments coming out of that?
I think they're fantastic days. Again, we like to think every time we gather is a baptism day because we want to celebrate people making decisions and going public with their faith by being baptized. But there are these special days where you can call them in the Harvest Sundays or Decision Sundays or Commitment Sundays. Again, we want that to be every weekend. But I think there are moments, and I've shared with other pastors, I think there are moments where you just you raise that sense of intentionality that today we're going to help people walk across the line and make a decision for Christ. And so for us, it always fits. If I have other pastors or leaders listening in, it always fits for us in January after the holidays. You win a lot of new people check you out at Christmas. New people are coming at first of the year. Some of them have made decisions as they've listened, and you've invited them to pray. And so January is a good time to make that a public commitment day. And so we just have those days where we encourage people to come. We're able to baptize them right away. We try to make the gospel very, very, very clear. We always try to do that, but extra clear, extra simple, and we're not interested in baptizing people for a show or a number or something like that. We want our motives to be pure, but we really do want to help and challenge people to make commitments to Christ. And every baptism in the Bible, I know there are a lot of preacher arguments about this, and I probably have some friends who would take an opposite view, but every baptism you read about in the Acts is, some use the word spontaneous. I don't know if I'm a fan of that word, but it's an immediate baptism. It's a baptism where they made decisions and they got baptized. Whether it's Acts 2, whether it's the story of the Ethiopian eunuch, whether it's the story of Philippian jailer, we could go on and on and on. There's this idea of you believe and you're baptized. And so I love that moment of come forward, make a decision to follow Christ, and be baptized as a symbol of that. To me, it's the model of the book of Acts, and just special days. We have many, many stories, and I think I shared one in the second service that came to me between the services. It was a text from a friend who's a member here, he and his family. They'd been a member of a church also out west. They had been here, moved away for a number of years. He has a very important job, and then come back to us in the last year or so.
Okay.
But he texted me between the services to say, hey, I just wanted you to know, when you get weighed down by whatever's going on in church life or daily grind, I just want you to know it was my wife standing down there on one of these days 7 years ago and made her decision to follow Jesus, and you baptized her. And I didn't know it then, but my wife had actually been the one to be able to counsel her and pray with her that day. And then he just said that ... our lives were forever changed. So it's moments like that that just confirm for me, yes, you got to call people to respond to the gospel, and we rejoice in. If you're listening, we rejoice that every single person was baptized. And yes, we do want to help you grow, and it's a lifelong relationship with Jesus. But it does involve a decision to commit and believe and receive the gospel of Jesus for yourself. So I'm so grateful. We had a great, great Sunday.
It was so special, and you can still watch it on our YouTube channel or on the Calvary app. You can watch the service, and the stream kept going all the way through the baptisms. And it's just really, I mean, we're just kind of using a lot of the same words, and I don't know how to do it any better. But boy, is it a special thing. I mean, there's stories we're still kind of getting together because, again, it happens right there. They make the decision, we baptize them. But there was one young girl got baptized, was just kind of overcome with emotion as she was in there. One daughter with her father were baptized kind of across stage. You could see a lot of emotion in there. It just is a special Sunday.
It's very special.
So if you missed it, you can. We'll put the link in there. You can go back and watch it. Great Sunday. Really coming off of a great Sunday. And now we're heading into what I think is going to be a great Sunday. We talked about this some this weekend, Pastor, but I thought we might take some time in the podcast today to talk about it a little bit more, because there's some unique things going on here at Calvary over the next several weeks. We're starting a series that is certainly a longer series than we usually do, where we're going to be going through the book of Revelation through like I said, multiple weeks. Going to kind of take us even right up to and through Easter. Isn't that right?
We think so, yeah. Usually, and every preacher does a little different, I guess. I usually like to teach in series. They're all, our job is to teach the Bible. So all of our series, for any pastors listening, we believe in expository teaching. You teach the Bible, but I like to have series that don't go more than usually about 6 or 8 weeks. That's about the length. We'll jump in. We'll do a chapter, a text, a section, and that way we're giving balanced teaching through the year, from Old Testament to New Testament to different kinds of teaching, but this series will go. We think it could change as I get into it, but as we've now mapped it out, it's going to take us all the way through and beyond Easter. Maybe right now, I think it's going to take us to May 1st, unless I audible in the middle of it. We've sketched it out through May 1st, and going to go through Revelation. Going to be a journey through the book of Revelation, which people always ask for us to teach on. It's one of those things, if you ever ask a crowd, what would you like to hear? And I don't do that much, but occasionally I'll do. And always that comes up, Revelation.
Right.
And, but this seems to me to be the right time to do a series of messages from the book of Revelation.
So as we head into that, we're talking about it as a team. We're all so excited. Hopefully, like I said, we mentioned it this weekend in services. I know that a lot of the people in our services were excited. I guess I would ask you, as you head in to teach the book of Revelation, what do you think is maybe the biggest misconception about the book of Revelation?
Wow, I think there are a lot of huge misconceptions. And, and I want to say it as I start off here. I think when you teach this book, I am just so enjoying studying and preparing, and always do, but I quoted Bertha Smith a couple of weeks ago, who said something to the effect of, great missionary, what's your favorite part of the Bible? Whatever I just did, I just last. But boy, I'm so excited to be really teaching this. What's the biggest? I think there are tons of misconceptions. And let me say, as you go into studying, reading, I've spent a lifetime thinking about this book. Honestly, I have. And I've preached from it. I've preached various texts from it. I've preached on the return of Christ. We've done series on the return of Christ. We've done expository series through Revelation 2 and 3, for instance, about less than 18 months ago.
Yeah, not that long ago.
We did one on Revelation 4 and 5 about 10 years ago. And then I've preached a lot from the last chapters about heaven and eternity many times. But I want to say this, humility. You need to approach with humility. I think a lot of times there are people, they have heard something, they think they know something, and there's a sense of, if anyone challenges my preconceptions or interpretations, there can be an immediate defensiveness or even combativeness. I think all of us, while we should endeavor to be people of strong conviction, and I have no problem with strong opinions along with strong convictions, as long as they're tempered by humility. This is a book that calls for that, because it has been a challenging book to interpret. That's why a lot of preachers don't preach from it. It's why others jump into it, and I don't think have any fear and trembling. Maybe they've read one or two books, and they've seen a lot of popular preaching or teaching from it.
Right.
But you asked me a specific question I'd like to not dodge, which is what is the biggest misconception? I think the biggest misconception is that the book of Revelation was written and it only applies to people living in the last days. That is, it only applies to right now, because everyone thinks that's who they are. They're the one. They don't want to read it and go, well, maybe a future generation will know what this means. They all try to figure out, not all, but many try to figure out, okay, what does it mean to us today? So I've had people say, is the United States in here? Is the United Nations in here? Do we have a code for the Antichrist? Going to be the blah, blah, blah? And what they're basically saying is that this book meant nothing for the last 2,000 years.
Right.
But lucky us, we happen to be alive at the very time that we're going to understand who the beast is, who is this person, what is that figure. But it didn't mean anything to the people who got it. It hasn't meant anything for 2,000 years. It just means something to those of us living in, the 21st century, I think that's the biggest misconception. I think the Bible has to be understood as something that is timeless and eternal. It's an inspired book, which means it did mean something to the people who first got it. Mm-hmm. Now, that does not mean it does not speak to the future. Sometimes people will classify, how do you view the book of Revelation? And there's a view of people who, there's a special label for it, but that believe it's all been fulfilled. It was just written for the first century Christians. It was, the enemy there is Rome, and how are they going to handle Rome, etc. And it's mostly been fulfilled. Then there's another group called this preterists. That's that view, preterists. It's all been fulfilled. The other view is called the futurists, and they believe it's for the future. Well, I think both. Again, I don't like those kind of labels because they're confining. Does the Bible say things that I think meant something to those Christians and those churches who received the book of Revelation? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I think it has meant something to Christians who have lived at any time for the last 2,000 years. But it also clearly speaks to the future. There are things in the book of Revelation that even haven't yet happened. So yes, it is also something that is prophecy in what we think of in the popular sense of the word, that it speaks to a future time.
Right.
But if we only think it's that, then we will miss its message, not just for them, but also for us. So I think the biggest misconception is that it's some kind of secret code written for a few people who happen to live in the latter part of the 20th century or now in the 21st century, like our generation.
Right.
So we're going to figure out the code, and some preacher is going to come and he figures out with some numerical gimmick what this is or this means or that means, and we're going to all be amazed at his extraordinary wisdom, and he just told us what is going to happen in the next 5 years of our life.
Right.
Like that's the goal. That's not the goal. That's not what this book is about. And when you study it from its historical standpoint, and you begin to see it in the breadth of it, and you read not just people who have interpreted over the last few decades, but how the Christian church has approached it for 2,000 years, I think then you begin to see the message, and it doesn't make it less powerful, believe me. Right. It doesn't make it less powerful. It makes it more powerful. It doesn't make it less exciting. It makes it 1,000 times more exciting when you understand the historical context and you understand what it has meant to Christians of every age, and therefore what it means for us today. And yes, what it means for the future.
Yeah, but I think that's right on the nose. I mean, for a lot of people, they've experienced it as some sort of Da Vinci Code style thing that it's all we can crack it and you can unlock. And then obviously some have even taken to telling stories of how these things will play out in our modern times. And I think, if I'm not mistaken here, that's not even necessarily – haven't like several generations sort of thought they were living in the end times?
And all those commentators have one thing in common. They're all wrong. Just give it a little time.
Yeah.
And they're all proved wrong. Yeah. And I heard these theories first bandied about as a young Christian. And I can remember prophecy experts. The first time I was exposed to them, I mean, it scared the bejeebers out of me, fascinated me. I was just drawn as this kid, and we had movies A Thief in the Night, if you grew up in the youth group in the 70s. I thought if everyone in the world could see that movie, they would all get saved. I was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then I heard charts and about planets lining up, and, we've heard one well-known preacher talk about blood moons all the time, but that's not new, all that kind of conversation. And there's a secret code if you understand the Jewish festivals, or there's a secret code if letter A is 1 and B is 2, and you times it by 10 and divide it by 3 and stand on your head, you'll know who the Antichrist is. I mean, that stuff is not new, and all those guys end up being proven wrong in about 10 years.
Yeah.
And I still have on my shelf, I've kept this book. Maybe I'll show it to people. 88 Reasons Why Jesus is Coming Back in 1988. I have the book. 88 Reasons. I have it. It's a real book. 88 Reasons. And somebody goes, yeah, well, the guy wasn't a rocket scientist who wrote it. Actually, he was a rocket scientist. That's crazy. He worked for NASA, of all things. And he was a lay theologian, and he thought he had some code, and it had to do, of course, with when Israel came back to the Middle East, and it had to do with how he interpreted a generation will not pass away, and yada, yada. But he had 88 reasons. That was just one reason. He had 88. And then when he missed it, he wrote, you cannot make this stuff up. He wrote a second book entitled 89 Reasons Why Jesus is Coming Back Next. It was, no, it's true. I do not have that book. And if someone has it, please, I would love a copy. I would put them side by side on my shelf.
Yeah.
But that's true. It was there were fewer people who bought the second book. It's kind of like you get one shot, and when you blow the first one, you're not going to do very well with the second one.
Right.
And he did not, I don't think he got as much attention with the second one.
Probably not. This is actually a fun fact. I feel like is very pertinent to this. There was, I guess, some movement around the world was supposed to end, or something was supposed to happen on my wedding day.
Oh, really?
May 21st, yeah.
Oh, my God.
There was like a lot of
That's a couple years ago,
people were telling us,
remember that.
Like, this is the day. And I was
Did
like,
you think about moving the wedding?
I just was like, I hope it's later in the day. I hope it's not like
through the
first
wedding.
thing.
That's right. Yeah.
But that is truly, we were talking some as a team, just again running into the series, and I was sharing with you, Pastor, just some, like that's me coming up in church. Those were a lot of our thoughts on this. We were taught the rapture was going to happen any second. And we would talk, as people grew up in church, church kids, like, boy, I hope I drive. I hope I get to drive first.
Yeah, well, let's be honest. All the kids were saying, I hope I get married first.
That was really
all the kids who are trying to live a morally pure life were like, I hope I can, please don't come back before I get married. And then some people get married and say, I wish he had come back. But, that's a whole another podcast. Okay, that's another podcast. So, we had all those, and we'll talk about some of those things.
Yeah.
But I really think that a lot of the way we are taught to look through this through a 20th century lens was really flawed. And I'm not trying to be prideful about it. I'm not trying to be arrogant about it. I want us to have an expectancy for the coming. We're going to talk about, this book talks about the coming of Christ. This book talks about some things which I think should make us look at things happening in our world with real concern. I really do. But I don't think we have to fall into the trap that somehow we got to make all the images and all the codes and all the numbers fit exactly what's happening now, like there's some secret code only available to us. I just don't. That is not the way the church, for most of our history, viewed this. This is not how the early church fathers viewed it. It's not how the Reformers viewed it. And without getting into too much detail or too much trouble out of the gate, there is a school of interpretation of the book of Revelation that really was unheard of in church history, that started about the late 1800s. And it came out of a very mystical group. It was popularized by a very prominent study Bible in America.
Okay.
And so there was a certain kind of period way of interpreting the book of Revelation that is actually very unique to 20th century American evangelicalism.
Interesting.
That is not shared by most believers around the world, and it is not shared by most believers throughout church history. And it's almost like we grew up thinking this is how you have to look at it, and if you ever take that lens off and then try to look at it through another lens, maybe a historical lens, what did this mean to these Christians? You suddenly see it different. And I think, there are two people I want to caution about this series, okay? Number one, I want to caution those of you who are so when I announced we were teaching through the book of Revelation, you were so excited. You went and dusted off all your books. You've got your charts out.
Cleared the calendar.
You've cleared the calendar. It's like finally finally he's going to do this. He's been avoiding this. Now he's going to do it. And you got your books in charge, and you know what Dr. Bottlehead says and Dr. Smellifungus said. You've got that, and we're going to finally, and this is going to be the answer to, whatever. And I just want to go, okay, settle down, and put the other books away. I'm all for lots of books. I'm reading lots of books, believe me. But let's just open our Bibles, and you're going to I can't wait to hear, is he in that camp or is he in that camp? Does he have that title? Is he this millennial, that millennial? I'm going to avoid those titles. I mean, as long as I can and as much as I can. You know why? Because as soon as you share those titles, people put you in one side or the other. Right. And therefore, I'm going to frustrate some of you so-called prophecy experts. I know you're going to be frustrated because I'm not dancing to those titles. I'm just not going to do it. And it's going to bother some of you. The other people I really want to speak to, I have even more affinity for, which is the people who they just want to check out almost. And I don't know if there's any of those, but there's some I've heard messages on this before, and it just confused me, or it just frightened me, or I've stayed away from that book. Can we just teach Philippians again? Because that's so practical to where I'm at. Right. Revelation, it's dragons and it's beasts and it's people with 7 horns and 10 heads, and I'm going to have nightmares. I just want you to take a deep breath. I want you to relax. I want you to come with your Bible in your hand, ready to learn, because I think you're going to see this book has more to do with your life than you could possibly imagine. And I'm reading one scholar. I'll just give you this quote. I'm reading one scholar who said, and he wrote a number of books on the Gospel of John and other things, but it blew me away when he said this. If I had one book, if I could only take one book in the Bible with me on the desert island question, right? We all want the whole Bible, okay? We all want it beginning to end. Please hear me. But he said, if you told me I could only read from one book for the rest of my days, we're not going to let you read from any other Bible book for the rest of your days. Right. I only get one. None of us would like that. But if that's the case, he said, I would choose the book of Revelation. And he said, because it shows me more about who Jesus is right now and what he is doing right now and what is going on in the world right now and why I can trust him right now and why I can have hope and confidence and indeed excitement as I think about the future than the book of Revelation. Wow. So I hope a lot more people are saying that when we're done with this.
Wow. It is going to be a fun series, and we can't wait to kick it off this coming Sunday. I'm so glad you acknowledged that, because it is truly, we talked so much at the beginning of this year about reading the Bible, getting in the Bible, reading the Bible. And I tell you, there's not really a book quite like Revelation, like you called out some there. There's beasts, there's dragons, there's beasts of the sea. There's so much going on. That if you ever did stumble upon it in your own personal reading, I would be one in the camp of I'm a little overwhelmed by what.
Sure you are.
There's points of the book where John, the author, goes,
"Oh, listen,
what's going on right now?"
When you say I don't know what's going on, John, you're right. You're so right. John is seeing things. First of all, you have to understand Revelation is a book about seeing. John goes over and over again. He goes, "Look." Yeah. And then he describes what he sees. And sometimes he goes, it's like this, which means he's struggling for words. Right. It's just like this. Meaning the closest thing I can describe it to is this. Right. But he is inviting us to look. Look at what I see. And several times he goes, what does this mean? Yeah. Well, if the guy looking at it had to ask that question, do you think we're going to ask that question? Right. Of course we are. So if you feel overwhelmed, here's what I want. You don't have to have the answer to every question you have to get the answers you need. I want to say that again. You don't have to have the answers to all the questions you have to get the answers you most need. And I'm convinced, are you going to get all the answers? No. Are there still going to be questions at the end of this series? Maybe more than when we started. Maybe more, because you're going to have better questions. Yeah. I hope you have better questions. We're going to have better questions. But I promise you, if you read this book, the 3rd verse of the 1st chapter says there is a blessing for those who hear or read the words of this book. And I believe you're going to get a blessing. You're going to get answers that you need. It's going to be a great spring season here at Calvary as we go through this series. As always, we'd love to see you at any of our campuses. We have services at 9 and 10:45 at Clearwater, Eastlake, our Seminole campus. We'd love to see you here as we kick this off this week. We got fun stuff going on all over. As we record this, it's a Wednesday. We're starting some brand new discipleship training classes at all of our campuses on Wednesday nights. If you've not been out there, we have a prayer time at every campus at 6 o'clock. Classes start at 6:45.
bunch of them starting, and they cover a ton of topics. But you're talking theology classes, life enrichment classes, like family, marriage type of thing. So many classes available on Wednesday nights. If you haven't been out to a campus on a Wednesday night, it's a very, very special evening. We'd love for you to be a part of those. They kick off tonight as we're recording this.
Yeah. And hey, let me say one more thing. If you want to read along, because we're going to, even going through the book over 13 weeks is a lot, okay, to deal with every single verse is going to be, we're not going to deal with, it's going to be hard to deal with every single word in every verse, but we're going to deal with the breadth of the book. We're going from Revelation 1 to Revelation 22. We're going through the whole book. But this week you want to read Revelation 1 through 3. Revelation, which is a big section, I know. We probably won't do that big a section. But it's because, and we can talk about this later, Revelation 2 and 3 we did a series on not long ago, and we're going to post that in the notes. So while I'm going to touch on it, I'm just going to touch on Revelation 2 and 3 because literally like 16 months ago, we did a 7-part series from Revelation 2 and 3. So we're going to be able to just do a broader overview of that and really camp out in chapter 1. But if you just wanted to read along with us, and stay up, this week, Revelation 1 through 3 is what we cover out of the gate.
That's great. Yeah, that's a great idea if you want to read along. And we will. We'll put that. The series is called Flickering Lamps, I believe. But we're kind of bumping it up on the app. If you've seen the sermon archive on the app, we're making it more towards the top. You can see it kind of quickly if you want to check that out. And we'll put the link in the notes to the podcast so you can check that out as well. But yeah, once again, thank you so much for listening. Thanks to everybody who rates the podcast, leaves a review. That's very helpful. We're very excited to start this series. We hope to see you this weekend, and we'll be back with another Ricecast episode here very soon.